Unless you've been living under a rock and somehow missed all of the recent MCU controversies, not the least of which is the people working for them, in which case I would like to know how much you would charge for rent, because at this rate I'm pretty sure the secondhand stress of shaving months off of my life at a time. But if you are that person who is living under the rock, then you may or may not have heard about the fallout with the rising star Jonathan Majors. So Majors, who plays Kang in the MCU, possibly past tense, started to get a lot of recognition with his award-winning performance in The Last Black Man in San Francisco. He also then went on to do an HBO series, Lovecraft Country, which I've heard middling reports on, but it seemed to have been liked by critics. He then go on to get a starring role in some massive projects like Devotion, as well as leading roles in commercial juggernauts like Marvel's Loki series on Disney+, as well as the recently released Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which was,
surprised to see me?
a film. He also featured as the primary antagonist alongside Michael B. Jordan in the most recent Creed movie, one that already has some awards buzz around it and went on to gross the highest amount for any entry in a Rocky universe, so it's gotta count for something, right? I mean, it really did seem like up until, well, last month, that Majors had really nowhere to go but further up, though it seems that he's bound and determined to prove the old adage true, which is, what goes up must come down. Now I'm saying all this hyperbolically, obviously, because I do not know Majors, never met him, and I'm learning / regurgitating all this information to you through secondhand sources, so I'd highly recommend that you take this with a healthy heaping of salt, in the eventuality that if it turns out to be untrue, or at the very least has been blown out of proportion. Now everything seemed to have started with Quantumania, but there were potential rumors and stories that his behavior behind the scenes, and more recently in the streets, may have been known about beforehand, which is its own murky swamp of questionable behavior. I'm part of the people that knew about this yet didn't report on it, but I digress. See, what spurred this whole conversation around him occurred on March 26th of this year, when Majors was arrested and being held for assault charges after he allegedly choked a woman and hit her. Now, after responding to a call in the Chelsea neighborhood of New York, police noted that the woman had minor injuries to her head and to her neck, and according to the report and the affidavit, she did say she was assaulted at the time of police responding, and Majors was, of course, subsequently arrested. Of course, he denied any wrongdoing, and his lawyers have vigorously maintained that he had no wrongdoing, citing that there was, quote, hard evidence, unquote, that the woman had an emotional episode and that she was to blame for the injuries. You can already kind of tell there's a little bit of gaslighting behind the scenes. Now, despite this insistence, Majors was arraigned, but the controversy was not going to slow down, and it doesn't really look like it's going to be doing so anytime soon, nor were his circle of friends going to do any more expanding, at least for the foreseeable future. The US Army, as a matter of fact, that was planning to launch an ad campaign with Majors starring in a role, which was targeting towards younger audiences, which is a weird thing to say. Like, I don't know why we're so obsessed with that. But anyways, the deal was pulled off the table, which is a massive blow to any celebrity's bank account, considering the budget of the Army and that they had pulled like several $1 million into this to like feature it on like commercials doing like NCAA games. But either way, it was completely pulled. And following that, his talent agency and manager dropped him just earlier this week on April 18th. He was also removed from his PR representative lead last month, though a time frame of that particular drop was uncertain. It's possible this may have happened prior to the reported incident. It's possible it happened afterwards, we're not sure. But what has been determined as of yet? Well, there's some circumstantial evidence at best around the whole story, including some delivered by Majors himself, so let's talk about that real quick. So on March 30th, a little less than a week after the allegations were put forward, Majors actually released a series of screenshots of the, and by series I mean the ones that were alleged to have been sent by the woman involved in the altercation. Now I'll leave the screenshot up on the screen for you for like the next half minute or so, because I personally don't feel like this screenshot really proves anything, and it's worth mentioning that these texts were not able to be independently verified, so there's a possibility that this is a fabrication. Now the circumstantial train keeps chugging along, with some members of the filmmaking community who have spoken out about Majors' on-set behavior, citing him as borderline sociopathic and difficult to work with. A.B. Allen mentioned a history of abuse with co-stars and crew, but said that those affected had chosen to stay silent, which is understandable to a degree, but it's still worth being a little bit doubtful over that particular claim. Tim Nicolai, an actor and a former Yale student where Majors attended, had this to say about the actor, and I'm going to read his whole quote. So, quote, "I'm just going to say this about Jonathan Majors and be done with it. Folks at Yale and the broader NYC community have known about him for years. He's a sociopath and abuser, and that is how virtually everyone speaks about him. It's a shame it took this long for him to be reported. I'm already seeing a bunch of why didn't you do anything? Folks, people have tried. ultimately needed a victim to come forward. It's both simultaneously awful to know he is still doing this, but also a relief he may never get to again. So I kind of understand that whole mentality of like, people have tried, but it kind of sounds like people with a whole lot of influence didn't really try. Like, maybe you should have tried, and there's just an idea. Now, while it may seem damning to Major's character, and in many ways, as I said before, most of this is all circumstantial, and to those of us who do not know the parties involved, it's little more than interesting reading. But considering the current radio silence of Major's co-stars, as well as major companies like Disney on his situation, it can be interpreted as a multitude of ways. Either he's guilty of multiple issues like this and the events that occurred last month are genuine concerns about his stability, or he's completely innocent and his defense will drop a bombshell shutting up all the naysayers and slanderers alike. But in the meantime, we don't really know the truth. What we do know is that Major's had a promising career ahead of him, and to see it potentially all washed away in the span of less than 30 days would really be unfortunate. We'll keep you updated if anything changes. Thanks for watching the video, guys. See you next time.